The poison sat in my pocket like a death sentence. Not for me, for the man I was supposed to murder in exactly 3 hours. Theodore Castellano, Chicago's most dangerous crime lord. My boss. And the only person standing between my kidnapped sister and a watery grave in Lake Michigan. My hands shook as I measured truffle cream into pastry shells, the same hands that would soon add 5 drops of lethal toxin to his wine. 3 years ago, my ex-fiancé destroyed my life. Tonight, his allies would force me to become a killer, unless Theo's impossible plan actually worked. If you want to know how a chef ended up poisoning a mob boss and lived to tell about it, stay until the end. Drop a like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The kitchen had always been Tessa Sullivan's sanctuary, the one place where chaos bowed to precision, where the alchemy of heat and skill could transform raw ingredients into something beautiful. But standing in the industrial kitchen of the Castellano Grand Hotel at 11 p.m. on a Friday, preparing canapes for a gala she was organizing rather than cooking in her own restaurant, that sanctuary felt more like a prison. Her hands moved on autopilot, piping delicate rosettes of truffle cream onto crisp pastry shells. Perfect technique. Flawless execution. The kind of work that used to fill her with pride back when she'd had something to be proud of. Back before Marcus destroyed everything. "Miss Sullivan." The voice made her jump. Truffle cream splattered across the stainless steel counter. She looked up to find one of Theo Castellano's security team in the doorway, his presence somehow both deferential and commanding. The kind of man who could break your arm while apologizing for the inconvenience. "Mr. Castellano requests your presence in his office before the gala begins." Tessa's stomach tightened. In the 6 months she'd worked for Castellano events, she'd met Theodore Castellano exactly 3 times. Each encounter had left her unsettled in ways she couldn't articulate. He was younger than she'd expected for someone who controlled half of Chicago's luxury hospitality industry. Mid-30s, with dark hair that always looked like he'd been running his fingers through it and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail about a person in seconds. There was something dangerous about him, something that made the small hairs on the back of her neck stand up whenever he looked at her, which was often and intensely. "I'm in the middle of..." She gestured at the 100 remaining canapes. "Now, Miss Sullivan." The security guard's tone left no room for argument. Tessa wiped her hands on her apron and checked her reflection in the stainless steel refrigerator, auburn hair escaping its professional bun, a smudge of truffle cream on her cheek, dark circles under her green eyes from another sleepless night replaying the moment she'd walked into Liaison Rouge 3 years ago to find the locks changed and her dreams stolen. She followed the guard through the hotel's private corridors, away from the public spaces where wealthy guests sipped cocktails and pretended not to notice the security cameras tracking their every move. They took an elevator that required a key card, ascending to a floor Tessa had never visited. The hallway was lined with what looked like original Renaissance paintings, the kind of art that belonged in museums, not hotel corridors. Everything about this floor screamed power and money in quantities that made normal people uncomfortable. Theo's office was more like a penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the Chicago skyline at dusk, the city lights beginning to twinkle like scattered diamonds. He stood at those windows, his back to her, wearing a tuxedo that had clearly been tailored to emphasize his broad shoulders and lean frame. When he turned, his expression was unreadable. "Tessa." Her name and his voice always did something strange to her pulse. "Thank you for coming." Did I have a choice? The words came out sharper than she'd intended, born from 3 years of being manipulated by men who smiled while they destroyed her. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or approval. "You always have a choice. That's why I wanted to speak with you before tonight's event." He moved to a bar cart and poured 2 glasses of wine without asking if she wanted one. "There's someone attending tonight who I suspect will be unpleasant for you." Her mouth went dry. "Who?" "Marcus Whitmore." Theo handed her a glass, his fingers brushing hers in a way that felt deliberate. "He's attending as the guest of Vincent Calabrese, who's considering a partnership with Marcus's restaurant group." The wine sloshed dangerously close to the rim of her glass. Vincent Calabrese. Even she knew that name. Old money, older grudges, and rumored connections to organized crime that no one discussed openly. "Why are you telling me this?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Because I believe in being prepared. Theo's gaze never left her face. And because I want you to know that if Marcus causes any problems tonight, I will handle it, personally. There was something in the way he said personally that made it sound like a threat. Not to her. For her. Mr. Castellano, I appreciate the warning, but I can handle Marcus. Can you? He said it gently, but the words still landed like a slap. I've been handling him for 3 years. By hiding in a kitchen instead of running your own restaurant. Heat flooded her face, embarrassment mixed with anger. Then you know I don't need your pity. I'm not offering pity. He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtly spiced. I'm offering protection. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why do you care what happens to me? I organize your events. I'm barely on your radar. You're wrong about that. His voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that made her skin prickle with awareness. You've been very much on my radar since the day I hired you. Why do you think I insisted on you specifically for this position? Her heart hammered against her ribs. The HR director said I was the most qualified candidate. The HR director says what I tell her to say. He reached out slowly, giving her time to step back, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was surprisingly gentle, at odds with the intensity in his eyes. I've been watching you for a long time, Tessa, long before you ever applied to work here. She should have been frightened. Every instinct should have been screaming at her to run. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, drawn by something she couldn't name. That's creepy, she managed. Inappropriate. A slight smile curved his lips. Probably both. But I make no apologies for protecting what's mine. I'm not yours. Not yet. He withdrew his hand, stepping back to give her space. Tonight, Marcus will try to humiliate you. He knows you work here, and he can't resist the opportunity to gloat. When that happens, let me handle it. Trust me. I don't know you well enough to trust you. Then consider it a professional courtesy. You're my employee, and I protect what belongs to me. There was that possessive edge again, the suggestion of something deeper and more dangerous than a simple employer-employee relationship. Go back to your kitchen, Tessa. Finish preparing for tonight. And whatever happens during the gala, remember that you're under my protection now. She wanted to argue, to tell him she didn't need anyone's protection, that she'd survived the destruction of her dreams, and could certainly survive an uncomfortable encounter with her ex-fiancé. But something in his expression stopped her. A certainty that made her think he knew things about tonight that she didn't. Why do I feel like there's more you're not telling me? She asked quietly. Because there always is. He moved back to the windows, dismissing her without words. Enjoy the gala, Miss Sullivan. Tessa left his office with more questions than answers, her skin still tingling where he'd touched her. The elevator ride back to the kitchen felt longer than it should have, giving her too much time to analyze the conversation. To wonder why Theodore Castellano, a man who commanded an empire, would concern himself with the wounded pride of a fallen chef. Back in the kitchen, her sous chef Jeremy looked up with relief. Thank God. I was about to send out a search party. What did Castellano want? To warn me that Marcus will be at the gala tonight. Tessa tied her apron back on and returned to the canapes, needing the familiar ritual to steady her shaking hands. Your Marcus? The one who... That's the one. She focused on piping perfect rosettes, letting muscle memory take over. Apparently he's partnering with some Calabrese person. Jeremy's face went pale. Vincent Calabrese? Tessa, that's not good. Why does everyone keep saying that name like it's a death sentence? He glanced around the kitchen as if checking for eavesdroppers, then lowered his voice. Because Vincent Calabrese is bad news. Old-school Chicago family, if you know what I mean. The kind of people who make problems disappear, permanently. A chill ran down her spine. And Marcus is partnering with him. Either Marcus is an idiot, or he's more dangerous than you thought. Jeremy resumed his work on the salmon tartare. Be careful tonight, okay? Stay in the kitchen. Stay out of sight. But Tessa had never been good at hiding. The gala began at 8. And within an hour, the ballroom was filled with Chicago's elite. Old money, new money, and the kind of people who transcended such classifications entirely. Tessa moved through the crowd with a clipboard, ensuring the catering staff maintained their precise timing, that the wine flowed freely, that every detail of the event reflected perfectly on Castellano events, and by extension, on Theo himself. She saw him across the room, surrounded by men in expensive suits. Their eyes met for a moment. He gave her an almost imperceptible nod, a reminder of his earlier promise. Then his attention returned to his conversation, and she continued her rounds. She didn't see Marcus until it was too late to avoid him. Well, well, his voice made her skin crawl. If it isn't my former protege, reduced to party planning, how the mighty have fallen. Tessa turned slowly, giving herself time to school her expression into something neutral. Marcus looked exactly as she remembered, classically handsome in that prep school way. Blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing his success like a second skin. The woman on his arm was young, beautiful, and wearing a diamond that could probably pay Tessa's rent for a year. His new fiancé, she assumed. Marcus. She kept her voice professional, distant. I didn't realize you'd expanded your thievery to include Calabrese's money. Congratulations. His smile sharpened. Still bitter, I see. I thought you'd have gotten over it by now. After all, it's been, 3 years? Time to move on, Tessa. I have moved on. She started to walk away, but his next words stopped her cold. Have you? Because from where I'm standing, you're still playing with food, just in someone else's kitchen instead of your own. He moved closer, his voice dropping to a mock whisper loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Tell me, how much did you have to degrade yourself to get this job? Or did Castellano just take pity on the poor chef whose boyfriend stole everything? Heat flooded her face. Around them, conversations faltered as people turned to watch the drama unfold. She saw his new fiancé's smug smile, saw the vindication in Marcus's eyes, and felt 3 years of rage and humiliation rising in her throat like bile. Mr. Whitmore. Theo's voice cut through the moment like a blade, smooth and deadly. I believe you're making my event planner uncomfortable. That displeases me. Marcus turned, his confidence faltering slightly at Theo's sudden appearance. Mr. Castellano, I was just harassing my employee. Theo moved to stand beside Tessa, his hand settling on the small of her back with a possessiveness that sent shockwaves through her system. At my event, in my hotel, using information you somehow acquired about Miss Sullivan's employment here. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm curious how you came by that information, given that we don't publicize our staff roster. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Marcus's face. Vincent mentioned, yes, Vincent. Theo's hand moved slightly, pulling Tessa closer against his side. Your new partner. Tell me, does he know about your history with Miss Sullivan? Does he know that you built your entire restaurant empire on stolen recipes and intellectual property theft? The color drained from Marcus's face. That's a serious accusation. It's a documented fact. Theo's tone remained pleasant, conversational, even as he systematically dismantled Marcus's composure. I have the contracts, the court filings, the testimony from your former investors who you defrauded. I've done my research, Mr. Whitmore. The question is, has Vincent Calabrese done his? Marcus's jaw clenched. Vincent knows everything he needs to know about our business arrangement. Does he? Theo tilted his head slightly, like a predator considering its prey. Then he knows you're currently being sued by 3 different former business partners. He knows you've been operating at a loss for the past 18 months. He knows you're desperate for new capital because your restaurants are hemorrhaging money. He paused. He knows you're using him. Around them, the crowd had grown quiet, everyone straining to hear the conversation. Marcus's face had gone from pale to red, rage and humiliation warring in his expression. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Theo's hand tightened on Tessa's back, a gesture of possession that should have offended her but instead made her feel safe, protected. And now you're going to leave my gala, leave my hotel, and never speak to Miss Sullivan again. Are we clear? For a moment, Tessa thought Marcus might actually swing at Theo. His hands clenched into fists, his face contorted with fury. But then a new voice joined the conversation. Is there a problem here? Vincent Calabrese materialized beside Marcus, and Tessa understood immediately why his name inspired fear. He was older than she'd expected, maybe 60, with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. Everything about him spoke of old power, old money, old violence carefully hidden beneath a veneer of civilization. "No problem at all," Theo said smoothly. "I was just explaining to Mr. Whitmore that his behavior toward my employee was unacceptable. He was just leaving." Vincent's gaze moved between Theo and Marcus, assessing. Then he smiled, and it was somehow more frightening than his neutral expression. "Marcus, perhaps we should continue our discussion elsewhere. It seems we have much to talk about regarding your business practices." The threat in those words was clear to everyone. Marcus's face went ashen. "Vincent, I can explain." "I'm sure you can." Vincent's hand landed on Marcus's shoulder, and Tessa saw Marcus flinch slightly. "Somewhere more private, shall we?" It wasn't a question. Marcus shot Tessa one last look of pure hatred before allowing Vincent to guide him away. His abandoned fiancée stood frozen for a moment before hurrying after them, her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. The crowd's attention remained fixed on Tessa and Theo, whispers already spreading through the ballroom. Theo's hand hadn't moved from her back, and now he turned her toward him, his free hand coming up to cup her face with surprising gentleness. "Let them see what he lost," he murmured. And then he kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was possessive, claiming, designed to make a statement to everyone watching. His mouth moved against mine with a confidence that suggested he'd been thinking about this for a long time. "And God help her," Tessa kissed him back. Her hands found his lapels, pulling him closer, even as her rational mind screamed that this was wrong, that he was her boss, that they were in public, that she barely knew him. But none of that mattered as much as the taste of him, the feel of his hand in her hair, the way he kissed her like she was something precious and desired and worth protecting. When he finally pulled back, his thumb brushed across her lower lip. "Tomorrow we talk," he said quietly, for her ears only. "Bedtime." Tonight, let Marcus see exactly what he threw away. She nodded, speechless, as he turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the center of the ballroom with several hundred pairs of eyes on her and her lips still tingling from his kiss. Jeremy appeared at her elbow moments later, his expression caught between shock and something like admiration. "Okay, so when you said Castellano wanted to talk to you, you left out some pretty important details." "I had no idea." Tessa touched her lips, still unable to process what had just happened. "That wasn't planned." But Jeremy was grinning. "That man has wanted you since the day you walked into this hotel. Everyone with eyes could see it. Everyone except me, apparently." She forced herself to focus on the gala, on her job, on anything other than the fact that Theodore Castellano had just kissed her in front of Chicago's elite. "We need to start the dinner service." But as she returned to her duties, she couldn't shake the feeling that tonight had changed something fundamental. The way Theo had defended her, the way he'd kissed her, the way he'd seemed to know things about Marcus that he shouldn't have been able to know. It all pointed to something larger, something more dangerous than a simple workplace attraction. And when she glanced back at the spot where Marcus and Vincent had been standing, she saw Theo watching her from across the room, his expression intense and unreadable. Tomorrow they would talk. But tonight, Tessa had the distinct feeling that she'd just become a piece in a game she didn't understand. A game played by men who wielded power like weapons and protected what they claimed with ruthless efficiency. The question was, did she want to be claimed? Tessa didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt Theo's lips on hers, tasted the expensive wine on his tongue, remembered the way his hand had felt on her back, possessive and protective all at once. And beneath that memory, darker thoughts circled. Marcus's face twisted with rage. Vincent Calabrese's cold assessment, the way Theo had known things about Marcus's business that shouldn't have been public knowledge. By 6 a.m., she'd given up on sleep entirely and was in her apartment's tiny kitchen, stress-baking croissants from scratch. The repetitive motion of folding butter into dough usually calmed her, but today her hands shook enough that the layers came out uneven. Her phone sat on the counter, silent. Part of her expected Theo to call, to explain what the hell had happened last night. The other part hoped he'd forget the whole thing, let her slip back into the comfortable obscurity of being just another employee. The knock on her door at 7:30 made her jump, scattering flour across the counter. Through the peephole, she saw Theo's security guard from yesterday, the one who'd summoned her to Theo's office. Her stomach dropped. "Miss Sullivan?" He nodded politely when she opened the door. "Mr. Castellano requests your presence for breakfast. The car is waiting downstairs." "I'm not dressed for—" She gestured at her flower-covered pajamas. "You have 15 minutes." It wasn't a suggestion. 20 minutes later, Tessa emerged from her bedroom in the most professional outfit she owned, a simple navy dress and heels that pinched. The guard didn't comment on her tardiness, just escorted her to a black SUV with tinted windows that screamed organized crime so loudly she almost refused to get in. They didn't go to the hotel. Instead, the SUV wound through Chicago's streets to a neighborhood she'd never visited, stopping in front of what looked like a converted warehouse. The guard opened her door and led her through a heavy steel entrance into a space that took her breath away. The warehouse had been transformed into a stunning loft apartment, exposed brick walls, soaring ceilings, industrial fixtures mixed with expensive furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with morning light. And in the open kitchen, because of course it had a kitchen that would make any chef weep with envy, Theo stood in jeans and a white t-shirt, making what smelled like fresh pasta. He looked up when she entered, his expression softening in a way she'd never seen before. "You came. Did I have a choice?" She echoed her words from yesterday, but this time without the sharp edge. "There's always a choice, Tessa." He wiped his hands on a towel and moved toward her. "Coffee?" "Answers." She stayed by the door, needing the distance. "You said we'd talk today, so let's talk. Starting with why you kissed me in front of half of Chicago's elite last night." "Multiple reasons." He poured 2 cups of coffee with the ease of someone comfortable in his own space. "The immediate reason was to send a message to Marcus and Vincent. The deeper reason is that I've wanted to kiss you for 6 months, and last night provided an excuse I couldn't resist." The casual honesty threw her. "You can't just—" "We work together. There are rules. I own the company. I make the rules." He held out a cup. "Cream, 2 sugars, the way you like it." She took the coffee automatically, then froze. "How do you know how I take my coffee?" "The same way I know you bake when you're stressed, that you call your sister every Sunday at 3 p.m., that you haven't been on a date since Marcus." His gaze never wavered. "That you have a scar on your left shoulder from the car accident that killed your parents when you were 16. Ice water flooded her veins. "That's not romantic. That's stalking. It's protection." He moved back to the stove, giving her space. 6 months ago, one of Marcus's former investors came to me with information about what Marcus had done to you, how he'd stolen your recipes, manipulated the contracts, destroyed your reputation. This investor felt guilty for believing Marcus's lies, and he wanted to make amends. Her hands tightened around the coffee cup. "What does that have to do with you?" "I looked into the situation. What I found made me angry." He stirred the pasta water, his movements controlled but tense. "Marcus didn't just steal your recipes. He stole your entire identity as a chef. The food he serves in his restaurants, it's your food. The signature dishes everyone praises, you created them. He's built an empire on your talent while you hide in event planning." "I'm aware of that." The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. "I was there, remember? I lived through having everything stolen." "But you don't know why." Theo turned to face her fully. "Marcus didn't target you randomly. He was hired to do it." The world seemed to tilt. "What?" 6 years ago, your parents owned 3 properties in what's now one of Chicago's most valuable development zones. When they died in that car accident, those properties should have gone to you and your sister. Instead, through a series of legal manipulations, they ended up owned by a shell corporation. He paused, watching her face. That shell corporation was controlled by Marcus's father, Edward Whitmore. Tessa had to sit down. The nearest chair caught her as her knees gave out. "You're saying my parents' accident wasn't an accident." "I have proof, Tessa." Theo's voice was gentle but firm. Police reports that were buried. Witness statements that were never followed up on. Maintenance records showing the brakes on your parents' car had been recently serviced but somehow failed catastrophically. And most damning, a paper trail showing Edward Whitmore paid off the investigating officer. The coffee cup slipped from her nerveless fingers, crashing to the floor. She barely noticed. Why? Why would they kill my parents for properties? Because those properties are now worth approximately $40 million. And because Edward Whitmore is Vincent Calabrese's cousin. Theo crouched in front of her, his hands gentle on her knees. It all connects, Tessa. Your parents' deaths. Marcus targeting you specifically for a relationship. Stealing your restaurant. It was all orchestrated to keep you powerless and broke, unable to investigate or fight back. Tears burned her eyes, but she wouldn't let them fall. You're telling me that the man I was going to marry helped murder my parents? I'm telling you that Marcus is a weapon his family has been using against you for years. Theo's thumbs brushed against her knees, grounding. And I'm telling you that Vincent Calabrese now owns those properties through various legal transfers, and he will do anything to keep them, including killing you and your sister if you become a problem. The realization settled over her like a shroud. That's why you hired me. Not because you wanted to help me, but because you needed to control where I was. Keep me safe while you investigated. That's how it started. His honesty was almost brutal. But then I got to know you, watched you rebuild your confidence, saw your talent, your strength, listened to you laugh with the kitchen staff and turn every event into something special. And somewhere along the way, protecting you stopped being a business decision and started being personal. She wanted to pull away, to rage at him for manipulating her the same way Marcus had. But the way he was looking at her, like she was something precious and rare, made it impossible to move. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? Would you have believed me? A stranger telling you your parents were murdered? That your ex-fiancé was part of a conspiracy against you? He shook his head. You would have thought I was insane. I needed you to trust me first, to see that I was different from Marcus. And the kiss last night was real. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Everything I feel for you is real, Tessa. The protection, the investigation, bringing down Marcus and Vincent, that's business. But this, he gestured between them. This is personal. Her phone rang, shrill and intrusive. She fumbled it from her purse, saw her sister Lily's name on the screen. I need to answer this. Theo stood, moving back to give her privacy. Lily? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Everything okay? It's early for Tessa. Her sister's voice was wrong, tight with fear, trying to sound calm. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. They said if I didn't call you, they'd... Tessa's blood turned to ice. Lily, what's happening? Where are you? A new voice came on the line, male, unfamiliar, coldly amused. Miss Sullivan, your sister is currently enjoying our hospitality. Whether she continues to enjoy it depends entirely on your cooperation. Theo was suddenly beside her, pressing a button on her phone to activate the speaker. His face had gone hard, dangerous in a way that should have frightened her. Who is this? Tessa demanded, her chef's command voice cutting through the panic. Someone who needs your particular skills. The man chuckled. Tonight, Theodore Castellano is hosting a private dinner for certain business associates. You will be preparing that dinner personally, and you will add a special ingredient to Mr. Castellano's portion. The ingredient will be provided to you this afternoon. Poison. He was asking her to poison Theo. She looked at the man standing beside her, saw the muscle ticking in his jaw, the fury banked in his eyes. And if I refuse? She already knew the answer. Then your sister's body will be found in Lake Michigan, piece by piece. We'll start with her fingers. She has such lovely hands. Would be ashamed to ruin them. The casual cruelty in his tone made her stomach heave. You have until 6 p.m. to confirm your cooperation. A package will be delivered to the hotel kitchen at 4. Follow the instructions precisely, and Lily will be returned to you unharmed after Mr. Castellano's unfortunate passing. The line went dead. For a moment, Tessa couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then she was on her feet, pacing, her chef's brain already working through the problem even as terror threatened to overwhelm her. I need to go to the police. They have Lily. They're going to kill her. The police can't help you. Theo's voice was harder than she'd ever heard it. Half of them are on Vincent's payroll. The other half are too afraid to act against him. If you go to the police, Lily dies. Then what do I do? She spun to face him, tears finally spilling over. Let them kill you. Choose between my sister and whatever this is between us? You trust me. He closed the distance between them, gripping her shoulders firmly. You let me handle this. How? How can you possibly handle this? They have Lily. They want me to poison you. They're going to kill her if I don't. Tessa. He gave her a gentle shake. Look at me. Really look at me. She forced herself to meet his eyes, saw something there that stopped her spiraling panic. Not fear, not uncertainty, just cold, calculated determination. Do you know what I do? He asked quietly. Not the hotels, not the legitimate businesses. Do you know what I really am? I think I'm starting to figure it out. Her voice shook. I'm the head of the Castellano family. We control shipping, construction, waste management, and several other enterprises throughout Chicago and the Midwest. We have connections in every level of government, every police department, every courthouse. His thumbs rubbed circles on her shoulders, anchoring. Vincent Calabrese has been trying to muscle into my territory for 3 years. This, kidnapping your sister, forcing you to act against me, this is his move. He thinks he's backed me into a corner. Hasn't he? He's given me exactly what I needed, justification to end this war permanently. Theo pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. I have men tracking Lily right now. By tonight, I'll know where she's being held. And I promise you, Tessa, I will get her back. And if you can't, if something goes wrong, I can't lose her. She gripped his shirt, needing to hold on to something solid. She's all I have left. You have me. The words were simple, but the intensity behind them made her breath catch. I told you yesterday, you're under my protection now. That extends to your sister. No one touches what's mine. Ever. There was that possessive edge again. The assumption of ownership that should have infuriated her. Instead, it made her feel safe for the first time since Lily's terrified voice had come through the phone. What do you need me to do? She asked quietly. Exactly what they told you to do. At her sharp inhale, he continued quickly. You'll accept the package. You'll prepare the dinner. You'll add the poison to my food. But before you do, you'll bring the poison to me. I have contacts who can analyze it, determine what it is, and prepare an antidote. That's insane. She pulled back to stare at him. What if something goes wrong? What if they're watching and see me give you the poison first? What if... Then we improvise. He cupped her face between his hands. But we will get Lily back, and we will destroy everyone involved in hurting your family. I swear it. His certainty was almost frightening. This was a man used to wielding power, used to winning, used to removing obstacles with ruthless efficiency. And right now, that power was focused on protecting her. Why? The question escaped before Tessa could stop it. Why do you care so much? You barely know me. I know you better than you think. His smile was slight, sad. 6 months of watching, learning everything about you. 6 months of seeing your strength, your talent, the way you've survived everything life threw at you. 6 months of falling for a woman who didn't even know I existed beyond a distant boss. Theo. She didn't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle and lingering. Just trust me. Let me protect you and Lily. And when this is over, when Vincent and Marcus and everyone who hurt you is dealt with, then we'll figure out what this is between us. And if I can't handle what you are, she had to ask, if I can't live with the violence, the crime, then I'll let you go. The pain in his voice was real. But give me a chance first, Tessa. Let me show you that I'm different from Marcus, that I'll never hurt you, never steal from you, never use you, that everything I do to protect you. His phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression hardening. They're moving Lily. My men are tracking the vehicle. I need to coordinate the extraction. Let me come with you. No. He was already moving toward a room she assumed was his office. You go to work. Act normal. Accept the package when it arrives. I'll have someone watching you at all times. When the dinner starts tonight, follow your instincts. If something feels wrong, you signal my security team. We'll be ready. What's the signal? He paused in the doorway, a slight smile crossing his face despite the tension. Order me a Manhattan. I hate Manhattans. Everyone in my organization knows that. If you bring me one during dinner, they'll know something's wrong. It was absurd, planning for disaster using cocktail preferences, but she nodded, committing it to memory. Theo, get my sister back. I will. His gaze held hers for a long moment. And Tessa, after tonight, no one will ever threaten you again. I'll make sure of it. He disappeared into his office, leaving her standing in his beautiful apartment with cold coffee on the floor and her entire world crumbling around her. Her parents hadn't died in an accident. They'd been murdered. Marcus hadn't loved her. He'd targeted her as part of a long-term conspiracy. And the man who'd just promised to save her sister was a crime lord who'd been watching her for months. She should have run. Should have grabbed Lily and disappeared, started over somewhere far from Chicago and its dangerous families and their deadly games. But as she listened to Theo's voice through the office door, firm and commanding as he coordinated whatever criminal empire he controlled, Tessa realized she wasn't going anywhere. Because despite everything, despite the manipulation, the surveillance, the casual violence implicit in his world, Theo Castellano was the first man since her parents died who'd made her feel truly protected, who'd looked at what Marcus had done to her and decided to make it right, who'd kissed her like she was precious and promised to destroy anyone who hurt her. Maybe that made her as twisted as the men who played these power games. Or maybe it just made her a woman who was tired of being a victim, ready to become something more dangerous. Theo's driver appeared at her elbow. I'll take you to work, Miss Sullivan. You'll need to be seen arriving normally, acting as if nothing has changed. She nodded, gathering her purse, trying to smooth her expression into something that wouldn't betray the chaos raging inside her. As they left the loft, she caught a glimpse of Theo through his office window, phone pressed to his ear, his face hard with concentration. He looked up, caught her eye, and mouthed 2 words. Trust me. And somehow, she did. The hotel felt different as Tessa walked through its elegant corridors that afternoon. Or maybe she was different, seeing everything through the lens of what Theo had revealed. The uniformed security guards weren't just hotel employees. They were Theo's soldiers, part of a vast organization she'd been blind to for months. The wealthy guests weren't just clientele. Some of them were undoubtedly part of Chicago's criminal elite, doing business under the guise of luxury hospitality. She'd been living in a different world without even knowing it. Jeremy took one look at her face when she entered the kitchen and immediately pulled her into the walk-in cooler, the only place in the hotel where conversations couldn't be easily overheard. What happened? His hands gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. You look like you've seen a ghost. Lily's been kidnapped. The words came out flat, drained of emotion by sheer shock. They're making me poison Theo tonight, or they'll kill her. Jeremy's face went pale, then red with fury. Who? Marcus? Vincent? Does it matter? She laughed, a jagged sound with no humor in it. They have my sister. They want me to murder my boss. And Theo just told me that my parents' car accident 6 years ago wasn't an accident. It was murder, orchestrated by Marcus's family to steal our properties. Christ! Jeremy pulled her into a hug and she let herself lean into his warmth for just a moment. What are you going to do? Exactly what they're asking. Theo knows about the poisoning attempt. He has a plan to get Lily back. She pulled away, forcing herself to breathe evenly. The package should arrive at 4. I need you to pretend everything's normal. Can you do that? Tessa, this is insane. You should... The police can't help. She repeated Theo's words, believing them now. This is bigger than me, bigger than Lily. This is about territory and power and old grudges I didn't even know existed. The only person who can help us is Theo. Jeremy's expression said everything about what he thought of trusting a crime lord with their lives, but he nodded. What do you need from me? Help me prep for tonight's dinner. Beef Wellington, because of course Vincent Calabrese wants the most complicated, showiest dish possible. Keep everyone focused on the food, not on me. And if anything goes wrong, she gripped his hand hard. Get out. Don't try to be a hero. Screw that. His jaw set stubbornly. You're not doing this alone. The package arrived at precisely 4 p.m., delivered by a courier who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Inside the plain brown box was a small vial of clear liquid and a note with typed instructions. Add 5 drops to Castellano's wine during dinner service. Symptoms will appear to be cardiac arrest. Do not deviate. We are watching. Tessa's hands shook as she held the vial, knowing that this innocent-looking liquid could kill Theo if she made even a small mistake. But she'd prepared thousands of dishes in her career, measured thousands of ingredients. She could do this. She had to do this. She pocketed the vial and returned to prepping the beef Wellington, falling into the familiar rhythm of cooking to steady her nerves. Puff pastry, mushroom duxelles, perfectly seared beef tenderloin. Each component required absolute precision and focus. It was almost meditative, this act of creation, and for brief moments she could forget that she was preparing a dinner that could end in multiple deaths. At 5:30, Theo appeared in the kitchen doorway. Their eyes met across the stainless steel workspace, and without a word, she excused herself to check on wine inventory in the cellar. He followed at a discreet distance. The wine cellar was cool, dim, and private. The moment the door closed behind them, Theo pulled her into his arms, and she let herself collapse against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. "Do you have it?" he asked quietly. She handed him the vial, watching as he held it up to the light, examining the clear liquid. "My people analyzed a sample we acquired. It's a synthetic compound that mimics the symptoms of massive cardiac arrest. Undetectable in standard toxicology screens. Lethal within 30 minutes. His voice was clinical, but his hand tightened on her waist. "There's an antidote, but it has to be administered within 10 minutes of ingestion." "How did you get a sample?" She didn't really want to know, but she asked anyway. One of Vincent's men was persuaded to share information. The casual way he said it suggested things she definitely didn't want details about. "The antidote is already in my system. I took it an hour ago as a preventative measure. So when you add this to my wine, I'll be fine, but I'll need to fake the symptoms." Understanding dawned. "You'll need to pretend you're dying. For about 5 minutes, until my security team can secure Lily and neutralize Vincent's men." He tucked the vial into his jacket pocket, then cupped her face. "I need you to trust me, Tessa. Trust that I've planned for every contingency. Trust that I will get your sister back. What if they kill her the moment they think you're dead?" The fear had been gnawing at her all afternoon. "What if this is just an excuse to eliminate both of us?" "Then they've underestimated how much I care about you." His thumb brushed across her lower lip, the gesture achingly tender. "I have 30 men positioned around the building where Lily's being held. The moment Vincent gets confirmation that I'm dead, they'll extract her. She'll be safe before Vincent realizes he's been played. And what about you? If Vincent thinks you're dying, won't he try to finish the job?" "I'm counting on it." Theo's smile was sharp, dangerous. "Vincent has wanted me dead for 3 years. Tonight he'll think he finally succeeded, and he'll get sloppy. He'll reveal himself, his allies, his complete organization, and then I'll rise from the dead and destroy everything he's built." It was an audacious plan, reckless even. But watching Theo's confidence, seeing the cold calculation in his eyes, she believed he could pull it off. This was a man who'd built an empire through intelligence and ruthlessness, who'd turned legitimate businesses into fronts for a vast criminal enterprise without anyone noticing. If anyone could fake his own death and live to tell about it, it was him. What about Marcus? She had to know. Where does he fit into tonight? Marcus will be at the dinner playing the role of Vincent's loyal partner. Theo's expression hardened. "He'll be watching you closely, waiting to see if you can go through with poisoning me. And when I collapse, he'll finally feel like he's won, like he's destroyed the last piece of your life that gave you hope." "But I'll know you're alive." She gripped his lapels, needing to hold on to something real. "I'll have to watch you fake dying and pretend I don't know it's an act." "Can you do that?" His question was serious, searching her face. "Can you watch me collapse? See Marcus gloat? Maintain your cover until Lily is safe?" Could she? She'd spent 3 years rebuilding herself after Marcus's betrayal, developing armor thick enough to survive in a city that had taken everything from her. But watching Theo die, even knowing it was fake, that would require a different kind of strength. "Yes." The word came out stronger than she felt. "For Lily, I can do anything. For Lily," he pressed a kiss to her forehead. "And maybe a little bit for me." Despite everything, she felt a smile tug at her lips. "Maybe a little bit." His phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression tightening. "They're moving Lily again. My men are tracking, but we're running out of time. You need to get back to the kitchen. Dinner starts in 45 minutes. She nodded, starting toward the door, but his hand caught her wrist. "Tessa, after tonight things are going to change. Vincent's organization will collapse. Marcus will pay for what he did to you and your family, and there will be questions about what you knew, when you knew it. Are you saying I'm going to be arrested? Fear shot through her. I'm saying that being connected to me comes with complications. His grip tightened. But it also comes with protection. After tonight, everyone in Chicago will know you're mine. That means you'll never have to fear Marcus or anyone else again. But it also means you'll be part of my world, permanently. What if that's not what I want? She had to ask, even though she already knew her answer. Then I'll set you up anywhere in the world you want to go, with enough money to rebuild your life. His voice held no judgment, just sad acceptance. But I hope you'll stay. I hope you'll give us a chance to see what this could be. Us. The word felt dangerous and exhilarating all at once. Ask me again when Lily's safe. Fair enough? He released her wrist, but his gaze held hers. One more thing. When I collapse tonight, Vincent will likely try to get you alone, to ensure you actually poison me and aren't somehow involved in a counter-operation. He might threaten you, might offer you money to disappear, might even try to kill you if he thinks you're a liability. Her blood ran cold. How do I protect myself? You don't. My men will protect you. He pulled a small device from his pocket that looked like an elegant bracelet with a single diamond. Wear this. If you press the stone, it sends an immediate alert to my security team. They'll be on you in seconds. She let him fasten the bracelet around her wrist, the weight of it both comforting and terrifying. She was really doing this, really about to poison her employer, watch him fake his death, and survive whatever came after. Theo, if something goes wrong, it won't. He cut her off with another kiss, this one fierce and claiming. But if it does, know that protecting you and Lily is worth any risk. You're worth any risk. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in the wine cellar with shaking hands and a bracelet that felt like both armor and a collar. The next 45 minutes passed in a blur of controlled chaos. The beef Wellington came out perfectly. Golden puff pastry, pink beef, rich duxelles, plated with artistic precision on bone china. The wine was decanted, the table in the private dining room set with crystal and candles. Everything was perfect, elegant, exactly the kind of dinner that would be remembered, just not for the reasons Vincent thought. Tessa watched through the kitchen service window as the guests arrived. Vincent Calabrese, silver-haired and coldly handsome in a charcoal suit. Marcus looking smug and viciously satisfied, his new fiancée conspicuously absent. 3 other men she didn't recognize, all with the same aura of controlled violence that hung around Vincent like expensive cologne. And Theo, appearing last, looking devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo, his expression politely neutral as he greeted his enemies like honored guests. Her hands clenched on the counter. Jeremy appeared at her elbow, his face tight with worry. Are you sure about this? No. Honesty felt safer than bravado. But what choice do I have? You could run, right now. Just leave and never look back. And abandon Lily? Abandon Theo? She shook her head. That's not who I am anymore. I'm done running from Marcus, done letting powerful men decide my fate. Tonight I fight back. Jeremy studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Then let's make this the best damn last meal of Vincent Calabrese's career. They served the first course, seared scallops with parsnip puree and microgreens. Tessa watched the guests eat, saw Marcus lean over to whisper something to Vincent, both men's gazes sliding toward the kitchen where they knew she was watching. Theo caught her eye for just a moment, his expression unreadable. Second course. Third course. The dinner progressed with agonizing slowness, each dish a masterpiece that she barely registered preparing. Her entire being was focused on the wine service approaching with the main course, on the vial in her pocket that felt heavier with each passing minute. When the beef Wellington was plated and ready, she pulled the vial from her pocket with shaking hands. 5 drops into Theo's wine. That's all it would take. Let me do it. Jeremy reached for the vial, but she pulled back. No, if this goes wrong, I won't let you go down with me. She uncorked Theo's wine, a Bordeaux that cost more than her monthly rent, and carefully, precisely added 5 drops of the clear liquid. It dissolved instantly, leaving no trace. She handed the wine glass to the server along with the others, watched her carry them into the dining room on a silver tray. Through the window, she saw the server place each glass in front of its designated guest, saw Theo lift his, swirl it professionally, inhale the bouquet. Then he drank. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Theo continued his conversation with the man to his left, his expression pleasant and engaged. Marcus watched him like a hawk, waiting. Vincent's face remained impassive, but his fingers drummed once against the table, the only sign of his anticipation. Then Theo's hand went to his throat. His eyes widened, the glass dropping from his fingers to shatter against the floor. He tried to stand, stumbled, his chair crashing backward as he fell. The dining room erupted into chaos. Vincent was on his feet instantly, as were his men. Marcus stood frozen, shock and savage satisfaction warring on his face. And Theo was on the floor, convulsing, his face contorted in apparent agony, foam flecking his lips. It looked real. It looked so real. And even knowing it was an act, Tessa felt her heart shatter watching him. One of Vincent's men, a thick-necked enforcer, pulled a gun and pointed it at Theo's writhing form. "Should I finish him?" "No." Vincent's voice cut through the chaos. "Let the poison do its work. I want to watch him die slowly. Know that his empire is about to become mine." Marcus finally found his voice. "What about the chef?" "She did this." Vincent's cold gaze swung toward the kitchen, toward Tessa. "Bring her to me." Two men she didn't recognize stormed into her kitchen, grabbed her arms before she could react, and dragged her into the dining room. She didn't fight, couldn't afford to break character now. She kept her face blank, shocked, as if she couldn't understand what was happening. They threw her down beside Theo's still convulsing body. This close, she could see the sweat on his face, the way his muscles locked and spasmed. He was good, too good. If she hadn't known better, she would have sworn he was dying. Vincent crouched beside her, his hand fisting in her hair, wrenching her head back to force her to look at him. "Did you do this? I don't—" She let her voice shake, let real tears fall. "He's dying. Oh God, he's dying." "Answer the question." Vincent's grip tightened painfully. "Did you poison Theodore Castellano?" Behind him, Marcus watched with undisguised glee. This was his revenge fantasy playing out, her broken and terrified. Theo dying. Everything she cared about destroyed. He didn't even try to hide his satisfaction. "They have my sister." The words tumbled out, half truth and half lie. "They said they'd kill her if I didn't put something in his wine." "Good girl." Vincent's smile was hideous, triumphant. "Your sister is fine. For now. Whether she stays that way depends on how useful you continue to be." Theo's convulsions were slowing. His breathing became shallow, ragged. Tessa watched him, counted the seconds, waited for the signal that would tell her Lily was safe. Vincent's phone buzzed. He released her hair to check it, his expression shifting from triumph to confusion to fury in seconds. What the hell? Whatever he'd been about to say was cut off by the sound of breaking glass from multiple directions. Suddenly, the dining room was filled with armed men in black tactical gear, red laser sights painting every surface, and a voice over a megaphone ordering everyone to get on the ground. But Tessa only had eyes for Theo, who opened his eyes, looked directly at her, and winked. Then all hell broke loose. The next 60 seconds were the longest of Tessa's life. Vincent's men reached for their weapons, but Theo's security team was faster, better trained, utterly ruthless. Gunshots cracked through the elegant dining room, shattering crystal and splintering wood paneling. Tessa threw herself flat beside Theo as bullets zipped overhead, her chef's instinct to avoid injury overriding everything else. Then Theo was moving. Not dying, not weak, but rising with lethal grace, pulling a gun from somewhere inside his jacket and putting 2 rounds into the chest of the enforcer who'd suggested finishing him off minutes earlier. The man dropped like a puppet with cut strings. "Stay down!" Theo shouted at her, then pivoted to aim at Vincent, who'd managed to draw his own weapon. But one of Theo's men tackled Vincent before he could fire, slamming him face first into the imported Italian tile with a crunch that suggested a broken nose. Marcus tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Jeremy, her loyal, brave, utterly insane sous chef, stuck out his leg from the kitchen doorway and sent Marcus sprawling. Jeremy then proceeded to sit on him, which would have been comical if not for the violence erupting around them. The firefight lasted less than a minute. Theo's men were simply better. Better armed, better positioned, better prepared. When the smoke cleared, 3 of Vincent's enforcers were dead or dying. Vincent himself was zip-tied and bleeding on the floor. And Marcus was whimpering under Jeremy's weight. Theo crossed to Tessa in 3 long strides, hauling her to her feet and running his hands over her frantically, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did they—" "I'm fine." She grabbed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Lily! Where's Lily?" "Safe." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, then turned it to show her a video feed. Her sister sat in what looked like a hotel room, wrapped in a blanket, unharmed if shaken. A female member of Theo's security team sat beside her, offering water and what looked like reassurance. Relief hit Tessa so hard she nearly collapsed. Theo caught her, held her against his chest as she shook with reaction to everything that had just happened. "She's really okay. My men extracted her 45 seconds after I died." His hand stroked down her back, soothing. "They got everyone involved in her kidnapping. She was never in real danger. I had 3 different teams ready to move the moment Vincent made his play." "You bastard!" Vincent's voice was thick with blood and fury. "You were supposed to be dead." Disappointed, Theo released Tessa reluctantly, turning to face his defeated enemy. "You really thought I'd be stupid enough to eat or drink anything at a dinner with you without taking precautions? I've been building a case against you for 3 years, Vincent. Tonight you finally gave me everything I needed to destroy you completely. You have nothing." But Vincent's confidence was cracking. "This was self-defense at worst. Your lawyers will be busy defending themselves." Theo crouched beside Vincent, his voice dropping to something dangerous and intimate. "See, while you were focused on killing me tonight, my people were executing search warrants on your properties, your businesses, your offshore accounts. We found evidence of money laundering, racketeering, human trafficking, and most relevant to Miss Sullivan here, proof that you ordered the murder of Robert and Catherine Sullivan 6 years ago." The blood drained from Vincent's face, even beaten and bleeding. The implications of what Theo was saying hit him like a physical blow. "You're lying. I have the maintenance records from their vehicle, the payments you made to the brake specialist who sabotaged them, witness statements from people you thought were too afraid to talk." Theo's smile was terrifying in its cold satisfaction. "And I have Edward Whitmore's confession, recorded 2 hours ago, before he unfortunately suffered a fatal heart attack." Marcus made a strangled sound. "My father? You killed my father." "I didn't have to." Theo didn't even look at Marcus. "Once he realized how much evidence I had, he took his own life. Cowardly, but efficient. He did leave a lovely confession behind, though, naming everyone involved in the Sullivan murders, including you, Marcus." "I didn't kill anyone." Marcus struggled under Jeremy's weight, his voice hitting a pitch that would have been satisfying if Tessa wasn't still shaking from adrenaline. "I was 17 when they died. I didn't even know Tessa then." "No, but you knew what your father had done when you targeted her years later." Theo finally turned to look at Marcus, and Tessa saw murder in his eyes. Real murder, not the theatrical kind he'd performed on the dining room floor. "You knew she was the daughter of people your family murdered, and you still seduced her, stole from her, destroyed her career. That makes you complicit. That makes you mine." Police were flooding into the room now. Real police, the kind who weren't on Vincent's payroll. Tessa recognized the lead detective from news coverage of organized crime cases, watched as he took in the scene with professional efficiency. "Mr. Castellano." The detective nodded respectfully. "We got your evidence packages, very thorough. Vincent Calabrese, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and about 40 other charges I'll detail downtown." He gestured to his officers, who began reading Vincent his rights. Vincent's last look was pure hatred directed at Theo. "This isn't over. I have friends, allies. They'll come for you. For her." "They won't." Theo's certainty was absolute. "Because by morning, everyone will know what happened here tonight. They'll know you tried to kill me and failed. They'll know I have evidence to bring down anyone connected to you, and they'll know that Tessa Sullivan is under my personal protection, which means she's untouchable." He paused. "Unless they want to end up like you." As the police led Vincent away, Tessa felt the reality of what had just happened begin to sink in. Her parents' murderers would face justice. Marcus would pay for what he'd done to her. Lily was safe, and she was standing in a destroyed dining room, having just participated in an elaborate criminal conspiracy, watching the man she'd poisoned orchestrate the arrest of Chicago's most dangerous crime family. I think I need to sit down. Her voice sounded distant, disconnected. Theo was beside her instantly, guiding her to an undamaged chair kneeling in front of her. Breathe, Tessa. Just breathe. It's over. Is it? She looked around at the bodies being covered, the evidence being photographed, Marcus being led away in handcuffs. My parents were murdered. I poisoned you. I could have killed you if your antidote hadn't worked, if something had gone wrong. But it didn't. His hands closed over hers, warm and steady. You trusted me, and I kept you safe. I kept Lily safe. I kept my promise. By faking your own death and starting a war. Hysteria bubbled up in her throat as a laugh. This is insane. You're insane. I'm insane for going along with this. Probably. He smiled slightly. But you're also incredibly brave. You faced down your worst fear to save your sister. You trusted me even when every instinct probably told you not to. And you're still here, still standing, when most people would have fallen apart. Jeremy appeared, looking rumpled and proud. For what it's worth, that was the most badass thing I've ever seen. Both of you. Though next time you plan to fake a death, maybe give your sous chef a heads up. I nearly had a heart attack. You sat on Marcus. Tessa started laughing, couldn't stop. You literally sat on him like he was a toddler throwing a tantrum. He weighs like 150 pounds. It wasn't hard. Jeremy grinned. Besides, after what he did to you, I've wanted to punch him for 3 years. Sitting on him was the next best thing. The detective approached, notebook in hand. Miss Sullivan, I need to take your statement about tonight's events and about your parents' case. The next 2 hours were a blur of questions, explanations, and legal maneuvering that Tessa barely understood. Theo stayed beside her the entire time, his presence both comforting and intimidating as he guided her answers, made sure she didn't incriminate herself in ways that couldn't be explained as acting under duress. By the time they finished, dawn was breaking over Chicago. The dining room had been cleared of bodies, evidence collected, and Theo's hotel staff were already working on repairs. You'd never know a small war had been fought here hours ago. I want to see Lily. Tessa stood on shaking legs, exhausted but determined. She's at my penthouse. Theo offered his arm and she took it, needing the support. I had her brought there as soon as she was medically cleared. She's safe, Tessa, I promise. The drive to Theo's building felt surreal. Tessa kept waiting to wake up, to discover this was all some stress-induced nightmare. But Theo's hand stayed warm in hers, real and solid, anchoring her to reality. His penthouse took up the entire top floor, all glass and steel and expensive art that probably cost more than her entire life. But she barely noticed the luxury. All she saw was Lily curled up on a massive sectional sofa, alive and whole, and crying the moment she saw her. Tessa ran to her, gathering her baby sister into her arms, both of them sobbing with relief and residual terror. Lily was 23, tall and beautiful and so achingly young, and she'd been kidnapped because of a war Tessa hadn't even known was being fought. I'm so sorry. Tessa kissed her hair, her face, anywhere she could reach. Lily, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. No. Lily pulled back, gripping her shoulders hard. Those men said you'd blame yourself. They said you'd feel guilty. But Tessa, you saved me. Whatever you did, however this happened, you saved me. Theo saved you. Tessa glanced back at where he stood by the windows, giving them privacy. I just did what I had to do. Lily's gaze followed hers, assessing. The scary hot mob boss. Crime lord. Tessa didn't know why she corrected her. And yes, the one who's been watching you for months. At Tessa's startled expression, Lily smiled shakily. His security team wasn't exactly subtle once they rescued me. They told me everything. How he's been protecting you, investigating your parents' death, planning to take down Vincent and Marcus. She paused. They also mentioned he's completely in love with you. Tessa's heart stuttered. They said that? They didn't have to. I saw how he looked at you in that video feed they showed me when you were being questioned by Vincent. Like you were the only thing in the world that mattered. Lily squeezed her hands. Tessa, I know this is crazy and dangerous and probably a terrible idea, but when was the last time someone looked at you like that? Like you were precious? Never. The answer was never. Marcus had looked at her like she was a possession to be acquired and then discarded. Other men had looked at her with appreciation or desire or casual interest, but Theo looked at her like she was something worth destroying his enemies for. I should probably think this through more carefully. Tessa stood, aware of Theo turning from the windows as she approached. I should consider the implications, the danger, the moral complications of being involved with someone who's clearly committed multiple crimes. Probably. Theo's expression was carefully neutral, but she saw the tension in his shoulders, the hope he was trying to hide. But I'm going to kiss you instead. And she did, rising on her toes to press her lips to his, pouring all of her relief and terror and growing feelings into the contact. He responded immediately, his arms coming around her, holding her like she was something infinitely precious that he'd nearly lost. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I meant what I said earlier. You always have a choice. If this is too much, if you can't handle what I'm a chef who just poisoned someone and survived a shootout. She smiled against his lips. I think I can handle dating a crime lord. Dating? His smile was pure male satisfaction. I was thinking something more permanent. Let's start with dating and see where it goes. But she was smiling too, feeling lighter than she had in years. Also, I have conditions. Name them. He'd apparently agree to anything in this moment. 1. You help me rebuild my career, my restaurant, my reputation. All of it. I want Liaison Rouge back. Already done. I bought the building Marcus was using 2 months ago. It's yours whenever you're ready. Tessa blinked. You bought my restaurant? Technically, I bought Marcus's restaurant, but it was always yours. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I've been waiting for the right time to return it. Consider it yours. Condition 2. Lily stays protected. Whatever security you've given me extends to her. Done. She'll have a protection detail whether she wants it or not. At her concerned look, he added, discreet. They'll stay out of sight unless there's danger. Condition 3, and this is the big one. She took a deep breath. I need you to go legitimate. Not overnight, not immediately, but eventually. I can't build a life with someone who might end up dead or in prison. His expression sobered. That's a big ask, Tessa. My family has been in this business for generations. I know, which is why I'm saying, eventually, not tomorrow. She held his gaze. But if you want me, really want me, not just for now but for the future, then I need to know we have a future. One that doesn't end with me visiting you in a federal prison. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. I can't promise it will be easy. There are obligations, ties that can't be severed cleanly, but I can start transitioning the legitimate businesses away from the criminal enterprises. It will take time, maybe years, but I'll do it. For you. For us, she corrected, because I meant what I said about helping. I'm not just your girlfriend sitting at home waiting for you. I'm your partner in everything. His smile was slow, dangerous, and utterly captivating. Partner? I like the sound of that. Behind them, Lily cleared her throat loudly. This is super romantic and everything, but can we maybe get some food? I've been kidnapped and traumatized, and I stress eat. Theo laughed, a real unguarded sound Tessa had never heard from him before. What would you like? I can have anything delivered. Tessa's cooking. Lily looked at her with pleading eyes. Please, your risotto, the one with the wild mushrooms. I need comfort food made by my sister who just saved my life and took down a criminal empire. I didn't take down, Tessa started, but Theo cut her off. Yes, you did. You were the catalyst for everything that happened tonight. Vincent underestimated you, thought you were just a pawn. He didn't realize you were the queen. His hand found hers squeezed. And queens don't just survive, they conquer. It was ridiculous, overdramatic, probably influenced by the adrenaline still flooding all of their systems. But standing in Theo's penthouse with her sister safe, and the man who'd risked everything to protect them, looking at her like she'd hung the moon, Tessa felt something she hadn't felt in 6 years. She felt powerful. Okay. She headed toward what she assumed was the kitchen. But I'm using your ridiculously expensive ingredients, and you're going to sit there and watch me cook like normal people instead of hovering like the overprotective crime lord you are. I make no promises. But he followed her, and when she found his kitchen, which was even more spectacular than the one in his loft, he settled onto a bar stool and watched her work with an expression of profound contentment. Lily joined him, and for the next hour, Tessa cooked for the two people she loved most in the world, using the skills her parents had taught her, in a city that had tried to destroy her, under the protection of a man who'd declared war on her enemies. It should have felt surreal. Instead, it felt like coming home. The sun was fully up by the time they finished eating, Chicago's skyline glittering in the morning light like a promise of better things to come. Lily had finally crashed on Theo's guest bed, emotionally and physically exhausted, leaving Theo and Tessa alone in his living room with cold coffee and the comfortable silence of people who'd survived something momentous together. "What happens now?" Tessa asked, curled into the corner of his sectional sofa, wearing one of his t-shirts because her clothes from last night were covered in splattered sauce and the memory of violence. "Now we rebuild." Theo sat beside her, close enough that their thighs touched. "Your restaurant, your reputation, your life. Vincent's empire gets dismantled piece by piece. Marcus goes to prison for conspiracy to commit fraud, theft of intellectual property, and being an accessory after the fact to your parents' murders. Will it stick?" She'd seen enough crime shows to know that rich men with good lawyers often walked. "It will stick." His certainty was absolute. "I have prosecutors who owe me favors, judges who understand the value of my cooperation, and enough evidence to put Marcus away for 20 years minimum. He'll die in prison, Tessa. I'll make sure of it." She should have been horrified by his casual promise of destruction. Instead, she felt only grim satisfaction. "Good. As for your parents' case, that's trickier. Edward Whitmore is dead. Vincent will likely make a deal to testify against his remaining allies, but there are still loose ends. People who helped, who covered up evidence, who profited from your parents' deaths." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I'll find every single one of them, and I'll make them pay." "Legally?" she had to ask. "Mostly." His smile was wry. "I meant what I said about going legitimate eventually. But that doesn't mean I won't use every tool at my disposal, legal and otherwise, to get justice for you." They sat in silence for a moment, and Tessa thought about her parents. She'd spent 6 years believing their deaths were a tragic accident, mourning them, but accepting that sometimes bad things happen to good people. Knowing the truth, that they'd been murdered, that their deaths were orchestrated by people who saw them as obstacles to profit, changed everything. It made her grief sharper, more complicated, tangled up with rage and the need for revenge she'd never allowed herself to feel before. "Tell me about them." Theo's quiet request interrupted her dark thoughts. "Your parents. I know the facts from my investigation, but I don't know who they were." Tessa smiled, remembering. "My dad was a dreamer. He owned 3 small commercial properties and thought he could turn them into something special: artist studios, community spaces, places that would revitalize the neighborhood. My mom was the practical one, always doing the math, making sure his dreams had foundations in reality." She swallowed past the lump in her throat. "They loved cooking. That's where I got it. Sunday dinners were sacred in our house. Everyone gathered. Everyone contributed to the meal. My dad would make these elaborate French dishes he'd learned from some chef he befriended. My mom would roll her eyes but perfect his techniques, and Lily and I would just watch and learn and feel loved." "They sound wonderful." Theo's hand tightened on hers. "They were. And Marcus's family took them from us for property that wasn't even worth that much at the time." Bitterness crept into her voice. 40 million now, but back then? Maybe 5 million total. They murdered 2 people for $5 million. People like Vincent and Edward don't see it that way." Theo's voice was hard. "They see opportunities and obstacles. Your parents were obstacles, so they were removed. It's how they operate. No emotion, no guilt, just cold calculation." "Is that how you operate?" She needed to know. "When you make decisions about your business, your empire, do you see people as obstacles?" He was quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Sometimes. Not people like you or Lily or the innocents caught up in this world, But my enemies, the people who threaten what's mine, yes, I see them as problems to be solved. He turned to face her fully. I'm not a good man, Tessa. I've done things, ordered things that would make you sick if you knew the details. I've hurt people, destroyed lives, used violence to maintain power. I won't lie to you about that. But you're trying to change. She held his gaze. That's what you promised me. That you'd transition to legitimate business eventually. I will. Because you're right. This life has an expiration date. Either I transition out voluntarily, or I end up dead or in prison like Vincent. He reached up to cup her face. But, Tessa, you need to understand something. Going legitimate doesn't mean becoming harmless. I'll still have power, still have connections, still be someone people fear. That's not something I can just turn off. I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. She leaned into his touch. I'm asking you to be someone who builds things instead of breaking them. Someone who protects people instead of hurting them. Someone who uses power for more than just accumulating more power. Like helping a talented chef rebuild her stolen restaurant. His smile was slight. Like that. She smiled back. And maybe using your shipping empire for legitimate trade and your construction company for actual construction projects, and your waste management business for actually, that one's mostly legitimate. He looked almost offended. We really do dispose of waste properly. Oh, well, then you're practically a saint. She was teasing now, feeling lighter despite the heavy conversation. A mob boss who believes in proper waste disposal. How civic-minded. Crime lord, he corrected with a grin. And yes, I believe in proper waste disposal, also recycling. I'm very environmentally conscious. Tessa started laughing, real laughter that shook her whole body and brought tears to her eyes. It was absurd sitting here discussing environmental consciousness with a man who'd orchestrated his own fake death last night. But somehow it was also perfect. This moment of normalcy amidst the chaos. When she finally caught her breath, she found Theo watching her with an expression so tender it made her heart ache. What? I love your laugh. He said it simply, like it was an obvious fact. I've been trying to make you laugh for 6 months, watching you work, seeing glimpses of the joy underneath the armor you wear. But you were always too guarded, too hurt. Hearing you laugh now, really laugh, feels like a gift. Theo, she didn't know what to say to that. I know it's too soon to say certain things, he continued before she could respond. I know you need time to process everything that's happened, to figure out if you can really be with someone like me. But I want you to know I'm patient. I'll wait as long as you need. And in the meantime, I'll prove to you every single day that I'm worth the risk. Her phone buzzed, breaking the moment. She checked it and felt her stomach drop. 47 missed calls, 163 text messages, and her social media was apparently exploding. Oh God, what? Theo leaned over to look at her screen, then cursed. The story broke. Someone, probably one of the police officers or hotel staff, had leaked what happened last night. The headlines were sensational. Chicago crime boss survives assassination attempt. Calabrese empire crumbles. Chef caught in mob war. And there in several articles was her name, her photo from the hotel website, speculation about her relationship with Theo. They're calling me your girlfriend. She scrolled through article after article, each one more invasive than the last. They found my old restaurant, Marcus's theft, our history. They're digging up everything. I can shut this down. Theo was already pulling out his phone. I have people who can manage the narrative. Make sure, no. She surprised herself with the firmness of her voice. Let them talk. Let them know what Marcus did, what Vincent did. Let the truth come out. Tessa, the attention will be intense. Reporters, paparazzi, people picking apart your entire life. Good. She stood pacing to the windows, looking out at the city that had tried to break her. For 3 years I've been hiding, playing it safe, staying small, letting Marcus win because I was too afraid to fight back. But I'm done with that. If people want to talk about me, let them talk about how I survived, how I rebuilt, how I refused to stay a victim. Theo joined her at the windows, his presence solid and reassuring at her back. You're sure? I'm sure. She turned to face him. Besides, they're going to find out about us eventually anyway. We might as well control the narrative from the start. Us? His smile was slow and devastating. So there isn't us. Apparently. She tried to sound casual, but her racing heart betrayed her. Though we're taking it slow. Dating, remember? Not whatever this intense possessive your mind thing is that you keep doing. I'll try to dial it back. He didn't sound convincing. Fair warning, though. I've spent 6 months thinking of you as mine. That's not a switch I can just turn off. Then I guess I'll have to get used to it. She surprised them both by stepping closer, wrapping her arms around his waist. Because apparently I like the intense possessive thing more than I should. His arms came around her, holding her against his chest, and for a moment they just stood there, two people who'd survived the night, finding comfort in each other's presence. Outside, Chicago continued its morning routine, unaware of the seismic shifts in its criminal underworld, the fall of an empire, the rise of something new. Tessa's phone buzzed again, this time with a call from a number she recognized, her former landlord from Liaison Rouge. Miss Sullivan. His voice was obsequious, nervous. I heard about what happened last night. Terrible business. Just terrible. But I wanted you to know the building is available if you want it back. I'd be happy to work out very favorable lease terms. Not necessary. She kept her voice professional, cool. Mr. Castellano already acquired the property. I'll be reopening soon. Oh. His tone shifted to relieved. That's wonderful news. Please let me know if you need anything. She hung up without responding, then looked at Theo. You really bought my restaurant. I really did. 2 months ago, when Marcus's financial troubles became public knowledge, I knew he'd have to sell assets, so I made sure I was the buyer. He seemed almost shy about it. I was going to give it to you for your birthday next month. Surprise. My birthday isn't for 3 months. I would have waited. He shrugged. But then Vincent forced my hand with his assassination attempt, and the timeline moved up. She shook her head, overwhelmed by the casual way he talked about buying buildings and surviving assassinations. This is going to take some getting used to. We have time. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. All the time you need. Lily emerged from this guest room then, looking rumpled and vulnerable in borrowed clothes. Are you two done being disgustingly romantic? Because I'm starving again. And apparently Theo's kitchen has ingredients for actual crepes, which seems like a crime not to use. Since when do you make crepes? Tessa asked. Since never, which is why you're going to teach me. Lily grinned, some of her natural spark returning. Consider it therapy. We'll cook and you'll tell me all about how you poisoned a crime lord and lived to brag about it. So they did. Tessa taught her sister how to make perfect crepes while Theo watched and worked on damage control via phone and laptop, managing the fallout from last night with the same efficient ruthlessness he applied to everything. Lily asked 1,000 questions, some serious, some teasing, all of them helping to process the trauma of the past 24 hours. And slowly, the fog of shock began to lift. Tessa was alive. Lily was safe. Her parents' murderers would face justice, and she had a chance to rebuild everything Marcus had stolen from her, her restaurant, her reputation, her life. By noon, Theo's PR team had crafted a statement. Tessa was a victim who'd been coerced into participating in an assassination attempt protected by Theo when the situation became dangerous, and now recovering under his personal security. The statement positioned her as sympathetic rather than complicit, focusing on her survival rather than her actions. Will this work? Tessa asked as they reviewed the press release. It's already working. Theo showed her his laptop where social media sentiment had shifted from sensational speculation to widespread support. Apparently the story of a chef whose restaurant was stolen, whose parents were murdered, forced into a mob war, resonated with people. She was being called brave, strong, a survivor. It felt strange being the center of so much attention. But maybe Theo was right. Maybe she was done hiding. When can I reopen Liaison Rouge? The question surprised even her. She'd expected to need more time to recover, to process. But the thought of her restaurant, her kitchen, her space called to her like home. Whenever you're ready. Theo's smile was proud. The building needs some updates, new equipment, proper licensing. Give me 2 weeks to handle the details, and you can start hiring staff. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, she could begin rebuilding the dream Marcus had stolen. The thought filled her with an energy she hadn't felt in years. I want Jeremy as my sous chef. She started planning immediately, her mind spinning with menus and designs and possibilities. And I want to expand the concept, not just French cuisine, but a fusion of techniques I've learned in the past 3 years. Something that represents who I am now, not who I was when Marcus knew me. Whatever you want. Theo's hand found hers. It's your restaurant, Tessa. Your vision. I'm just providing the building and the capital. And the security. She raised an eyebrow. Because I'm guessing you'll insist on that. Absolutely. At least until we're certain all of Vincent's allies have been neutralized. After that, we can reassess. I can live with that. She squeezed his hand. Thank you. For everything. For protecting Lily. For getting justice for my parents. For giving me back my dream. You don't need to thank me. His voice was quiet. Intense. Protecting you isn't a favor. It's not a transaction. It's what I do because you're... He paused, searching for words. Because you matter more than anything. Lily made a gagging sound from across the kitchen. Okay, seriously, the romance is getting to be a bit much. Can we maybe watch a movie or something? Something violent to balance out all this feelings talk. They did. They spent the afternoon on Theo's ridiculously comfortable sectional, watching action movies and eating too much food, letting the normalcy of the moment heal some of the trauma from the night before. And when Lily finally fell asleep between them, exhausted by everything she'd been through, Theo and Tessa sat in comfortable silence, their hands linked over her sleeping form. This could be our life. Theo said it quietly, not wanting to wake Lily. Quiet moments. Normal days. Building something together instead of just surviving. Is that what you want? Tessa studied his profile in the dimming afternoon light. Because you don't seem like a quiet moments kind of person. I wasn't. Before you. He turned to meet her gaze. But watching you cook, hearing you laugh, seeing you with your sister, I'm starting to understand what I've been missing. What all the power and money and control can't give me. And what's that? Home. The single word held so much weight. You feel like home, Tessa. And I didn't even know I was looking for that until I found you. She should have been overwhelmed. This was too much, too fast, too intense. But somehow with Theo it felt right. Like they'd been building toward this moment for longer than 6 months. Like some part of her had been waiting for someone who would fight for her the way he had. Ask me again, she whispered. Ask you what? If I'll stay. If I'll give us a real chance. Ask me again. His eyes darkened with understanding. Will you stay, Tessa? Will you let me prove that I can be what you need? Will you give me the chance to build something real with you? Yes. The word came easily, naturally. But I have one more condition. Name it. When you transition to legitimate business, I want to be part of it. Not just your girlfriend watching from the sidelines, but your partner helping to build the new empire. She held his gaze. I want to use my restaurant as the foundation. Expand into a restaurant group. Create a legitimate hospitality empire that can rival anything Vincent had. I want to show Chicago that the Sullivans didn't just survive. We thrived. His smile was fierce and proud. Done. We'll build it together. Castellano Sullivan Hospitality. How does that sound? Like a beginning. She leaned over Lily's sleeping form to kiss him, soft and sweet and full of promise. Outside, Chicago glittered in the fading light, a city of possibilities and second chances. Somewhere Marcus sat in a jail cell awaiting trial. Vincent's empire was crumbling. Her parents' murderers would face justice. And Tessa was finally coming home. 3 months later, she stood in front of Liaison Rouge, her restaurant, truly hers now, with Theo beside her and a crowd of reporters, food critics, and Chicago elite waiting for the grand reopening. The building looked nothing like it had when Marcus owned it. They'd renovated completely, transforming the space into something that felt both elegant and welcoming, classic and modern. The perfect representation of where she'd been and where she was going. Nervous? Theo's hand found hers, hidden from view by her body. Terrified, she admitted. What if they hate it? What if the critics tear it apart? What if... They won't. His certainty was absolute. But if they do, we'll handle it together. Together. That word had become their foundation over the past 3 months. Together, they'd navigated the media frenzy surrounding Vincent's arrest and trial. Together, they dealt with Marcus's attempts to plea bargain by offering more information about his father's crimes. Together, they'd built this restaurant from concept to reality, with her handling the creative vision and Theo managing the business side with surprising respect for her autonomy. It hadn't been easy. There were days when the attention felt overwhelming, when strangers recognized her from news coverage and wanted to discuss the most traumatic moments of her life like they were entertaining gossip. There were nights when she woke up from nightmares about Lily's kidnapping, about watching Theo fake his death, about all the ways that night could have gone wrong. But there were also mornings waking up in Theo's arms, feeling safe in a way she'd never experienced before. There were afternoons in the kitchen developing new dishes, rediscovering her passion for cooking without the weight of Marcus's theft hanging over her. There were evenings with Lily, who'd moved into Theo's building 2 floors down and was thriving under the security and support of their strange new family. "Ready?" Jeremy appeared beside her, wearing the chef's whites of her new sous chef, grinning like they'd already won. "Because that crowd looks hungry, and we've got about 30 reservations in the next hour." Tessa took a deep breath, squeezed Theo's hand once more, and stepped forward to address the crowd. "Thank you all for coming tonight. Liaison Rouge has always been more than just a restaurant to me. It's been a dream, a passion, a part of my identity. When I lost it 3 years ago, I thought that dream was dead." She paused, meeting the eyes of the people gathered. But dreams don't die easily. They hibernate, waiting for the right moment to bloom again. Tonight is that moment. The applause was polite, expectant. She cut the ribbon with oversized scissors that Jeremy had insisted were Instagram-worthy, and then it was time. Time to prove that she deserved this second chance, that her talent was real, that she could create something that would last. The evening became a blur of organized chaos that every chef knows intimately. Orders flying, pans searing, the beautiful ballet of a kitchen working at peak efficiency. Her new team moved with precision, executing dishes she'd spent 3 months perfecting. Modernized French classics with unexpected twists, presentations that were artistic without being pretentious, flavors that made people close their eyes and savor. Theo stayed out of the kitchen. They'd agreed on that boundary, that this space was hers to command, but she could see him through the service window, working the dining room like the consummate host he was, ensuring every guest felt important, every critic got his personal attention. Around 10 p.m., a familiar face appeared at the kitchen pass. Robert Chang, the food critic whose review of Marcus's restaurant 3 years ago had praised innovative French fusion without knowing every dish he'd eaten had been stolen from her. She'd spent years hating him for that review, for legitimizing Marcus's theft with his influential words. He didn't recognize her at first, too focused on the dish Jeremy was plating. Then their eyes met, and she saw the recognition, the shock, the dawning horror as he put the pieces together. "Miss Sullivan." He approached slowly, carefully. "I owe you an apology. A significant one." "You do." She didn't try to soften it. "But right now I'm more interested in whether you think my food deserves the praise you gave Marcus." "Your food?" He gestured helplessly at his half-finished plate. "This is extraordinary. The technique, the creativity, the way each element works together. I've eaten at Marcus's restaurants multiple times over the years, and this is so far superior that I'm ashamed I ever gave him a positive review. So write that." She held his gaze. "Write about what you're eating tonight. Write about how real talent can survive theft and betrayal. Write a review that tells the truth." "I will." His promise felt sincere. "And Miss Sullivan, I'm sorry, truly." She nodded, accepting the apology but not absolving him. He'd have to earn his redemption the same way she'd earned hers, through honest work and time. The critic reviews would come later, she knew. But the real measure of success was the dining room full of people, the wait list growing by the hour, the reservations already booked solid for the next 3 months. They'd done it. She'd done it. Liaison Rouge was reborn. And this time, no one could take it from me. By midnight, the last guests had departed, the kitchen was cleaned, and her exhausted staff had gone home with praise and bonuses that made them smile despite their fatigue. Only Jeremy remained, sharing a bottle of champagne with her and Theo in the quiet dining room. To Liaison Rouge, Jeremy raised his glass. And to never sitting on Marcus again, because once was enough for a lifetime. They laughed, drank, and Tessa let herself feel the full weight of what they'd accomplished. This was hers. Built with her talent, her vision, her determination. No one could steal this. No one could claim they'd created it. This success was entirely, authentically hers. I have something for you, Theo said when Jeremy finally left, producing a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Her heart jumped. Theo, if that's what I think it is, it's not. He opened the box to reveal not a ring, but a delicate necklace, a golden pendant shaped like a whisk, studded with tiny diamonds. I know we agreed to take things slow, but I wanted you to have something to commemorate tonight. Something that represents your passion, your strength, your victory. She let him fasten it around her neck, the pendant settling just below her collarbone. It was perfect, elegant but whimsical, expensive but personal, just like everything about their relationship. Thank you, she turned to face him. For this, for the restaurant, for everything you've done to help me rebuild. You rebuilt yourself, Tessa. His hands framed her face. I just provided some resources and support, the talent, the determination, the courage to face down your past. That was all you. We make a good team, she admitted. Castellano-Sullivan Hospitality is going to change Chicago. It already is. He pulled out his phone, showed her the social media explosion around tonight's opening. Food bloggers were posting photos, critics were tweeting preliminary reactions, and the hashtag Liaison Rouge Renaissance was trending locally. By morning, everyone will know that Tessa Sullivan is back and better than ever. And what about Marcus? She'd been avoiding news about his trial, but she couldn't help asking. Sentenced this morning. 25 years for conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to murder. With his cooperation against his father's associates, he might get out in 15. Theo's expression was cold, but he'll never work in this industry again. I've made sure of that. Good. She felt no sympathy, only satisfaction. Marcus had stolen years of her life. Now he'd lose years of his own. And Vincent? She asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Trial starts in 2 months. My lawyers are confident he'll get life. Theo pulled her closer. It's over, Tessa. Your parents' murders will pay. Marcus will pay. Everyone who hurt you will face justice. Except you. The words came out before she could stop them. You've hurt people too. You've done things that would get you arrested if anyone knew. How is that different? He was quiet for a long moment. It's not. Not really. I'm a hypocrite, Tessa. I use the law to punish my enemies while operating outside it for my own purposes. I don't have a good defense for that, except to say that I'm trying to change. For you. Are you? She needed to know. Really changing, I mean. Not just paying lip service to the idea while continuing to run a criminal empire. I am. He met her gaze squarely. I've sold off 3 of our more questionable operations in the past 2 months. The gambling, the loan sharking, the protection rackets, all gone. I kept the legitimate businesses and the ones that can be made legitimate with time and proper management. It's cost me allies, pissed off people who depended on those revenue streams. But I'm doing it anyway because you were right. This life has an expiration date, and I'd rather choose my ending than have it chosen for me. How long? She asked. Until you're completely legitimate. 2 years, maybe 3. There are contracts to fulfill, relationships to carefully disentangle, people who need to be compensated or persuaded or occasionally threatened into accepting the new reality. He was honest with her, brutally so. But I'm committed to the timeline. By the time we've built Castellano-Sullivan Hospitality into the empire I know it can be, the Castellano family business will be above board, I promise. Okay. She believed him. More than that, she was willing to wait, to support him through the transition, to be his partner in building something better. 2 years. I can work with that. In the meantime, Asin. He pulled another box from his pocket, this one larger. I thought we could start planning. This box held a ring, a spectacular diamond set in platinum, surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like stars. It was the kind of ring that made statements, that marked territory, that announced to the world that she was claimed. She should have been angry that he'd lied about the necklace being his only gift. Instead, she started laughing, the same slightly hysterical sound from that day in his loft, when they discussed his environmental consciousness. We've been dating for 3 months. I've been in love with you for 9. He said it simply, like it was obvious. I was in love with you before I even met you. Watching you rebuild yourself, seeing your strength, meeting you just confirmed what I already knew, that you're it for me, that I'll never want anyone else the way I want you. That's insane. But she was crying now, overwhelmed by the intensity of his feelings, the depth of his commitment. We barely know each other. I know that you stress-bake croissants, that you call your sister every Sunday at 3 p.m., that you hum while you cook and get a tiny wrinkle between your eyebrows when you're focusing on a difficult technique. He wiped away her tears gently. I know you're brave and talented and stubborn, that you've survived things that would have broken most people, that you forgive but you don't forget, that you demand honesty even when it hurts, that you're building an empire with the same determination you use to perfect a sauce. Theo, I know it's too soon. I know I'm pushing. He took her hand, slid the ring onto her finger without asking permission, because of course he did. But I also know that I'm not letting you go, ever. So you can wear this ring as a promise of eventual marriage or as a symbol of my commitment or just as a really expensive piece of jewelry. I don't care. But I need you to know that I'm all in, Tessa. Completely, irrevocably, permanently in. The ring fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably measured one of her other rings while she slept. The thought should have creeped her out, but instead it made her smile through her tears. This was who Theo was. Possessive, intense, borderline obsessive about the people he loved. And somehow, impossibly, she'd fallen for him anyway. I love you too. The words felt like jumping off a cliff, exhilarating and terrifying all at once. I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe that first kiss. Maybe when you faked your death to save my sister. Maybe just gradually over the past 3 months of you being patient and supportive and helping me rebuild. But I love you. Even though you're a crime lord with questionable ethics and an inability to respect personal boundaries. I prefer transitioning entrepreneur with protective instincts. But he was grinning, pulling her into his arms, kissing her with a desperation that suggested he'd been waiting to hear those words for a long time. They made love there in the restaurant, surrounded by the evidence of her success, christening the space that represented everything she'd survived and rebuilt. It felt perfect, raw and passionate and real, the physical manifestation of the emotional intimacy they'd been building for months. Afterward, lying on the floor wrapped in Theo's jacket, because they'd been too impatient to go upstairs to the apartment he'd installed above the restaurant. For security, he'd claimed. Though they both knew it was so she'd have a private space near her kitchen, Tessa looked at the ring on her finger and tried to process how her life had changed so dramatically. I have a condition, she said into the comfortable silence. Of course you do. Theo sounded amused. What is it? When we get married, and yes, that's when, not if, because I'm wearing this obscene ring and I'm not giving it back, I want the wedding to be here. In Liaison Rouge. And I want to cook the entire meal myself. You want to cook your own wedding dinner? He propped himself up on one elbow to look at her. Tessa, that's insane. You should be enjoying your wedding, not working. Cooking isn't work for me. It's joy. She met his gaze. And I want our wedding to be authentic. I want to serve food that I created in a space that represents my victory, surrounded by the people who helped me survive. I want everyone who attends to taste what it means to come back from destruction. To know that no matter how thoroughly someone tries to break you, you can always rebuild if you're willing to fight. Okay. He kissed her forehead. We'll do it your way. But I'm hiring a full staff to assist because you're not running that kitchen alone on your wedding day. Deal. She snuggled closer. How long do you think we should be engaged before the wedding? A year? 2? 2 weeks. She pushed up to stare at him. You're joking. I'm not. His expression was perfectly serious. I've already waited 9 months. I'll compromise and wait longer if you insist, but my preference would be to marry you as soon as legally possible. 2 weeks is insane. I need to plan, to prepare the menu, You have a staff for that now. You have me to handle all the logistics. You have everything you need. He cupped her face. Say yes, Tessa. Marry me in 2 weeks. Here in your restaurant, surrounded by the life you've rebuilt. Let me make you mine legally, permanently, publicly. 1 month, she countered, her mind already spinning with possibilities. I need at least that long to create a menu worthy of the occasion, and Lily needs time to find a dress and... 3 weeks. His smile was pure negotiation. I'll arrange everything else. Flowers, music, guests, legal paperwork. You just focus on the food and showing up. 3 weeks. She agreed, then kissed him to seal the deal. But I'm choosing the wine pairings. I wouldn't dream of interfering with your wine choices. He pulled her back down against his chest. Though I reserve the right to veto anything from Marcus's old distributor. They lay there until dawn, planning their impossibly rushed wedding, talking about the expansion plans for Castellano-Sullivan hospitality, dreaming about a future that 6 months ago would have seemed impossible. And when the morning light finally streamed through Liaison Rouge's windows, illuminating the space she'd rebuilt from ashes, Tessa felt something she hadn't felt since before her parents died. She felt complete. The wedding was exactly 3 weeks later, and it was perfect chaos. Tessa spent the morning in her kitchen with Jeremy and her expanded staff, preparing a 7-course tasting menu that told the story of her journey, starting with a delicate consommé, representing clarity after confusion, moving through dishes that incorporated techniques from every chef and culture that had influenced her, and ending with a deconstructed croissant dessert that represented rebuilding something broken into something even more beautiful. Lily served as her maid of honor, wearing a dress the color of champagne and crying through her entire getting ready speech about how proud their parents would have been. Theo's sister flew in from Italy, a surprise since Tessa hadn't known he had a sister, and immediately adopted her as family with the kind of fierce protectiveness that apparently ran in the Castellano bloodline. The ceremony was small, intimate, held in the main dining room with only 50 guests, their closest friends, key staff, and a few carefully selected business associates. No press, no cameras except for one trusted photographer. This moment was theirs alone. Robert Chang, the food critic, showed up uninvited with his review of Liaison Rouge's reopening, printed and framed. A glowing piece that called her cooking transcendent and publicly apologized for ever praising Marcus's stolen dishes. Your wedding gift, he said simply, and my penance. She hung it in the kitchen where everyone could see it. Theo's vows made her cry, promises of protection, partnership, and permanent devotion delivered in that intense way of his that left no doubt he meant every word. Her vows were simpler. I promise to build something beautiful with you. I promise to trust you even when it's hard. I promise to love you even when you're being an overprotective crime lord who can't respect boundaries. The guests laughed. Theo grinned and kissed her before the officiant gave permission, and she kissed him back, tasting their future in that moment. The dinner was a triumph. Every course was executed flawlessly, each wine pairing perfect, the entire meal a symphony of flavors that had guests closing their eyes in appreciation. Between courses, she worked the room with Theo, accepting congratulations and compliments, feeling the full weight of how far she'd come. Marcus's empty chair at his trial, facing a sentence that would keep him imprisoned through middle age. Vincent's frozen assets, his empire dismantled piece by piece, her parents' murderers facing justice, and her, married to a man who'd declared war on her enemies and won, rebuilding an empire with her own hands. Finally free. What are you thinking? Theo asked during their first dance, holding her close as a jazz trio played something slow and romantic. That I should have tried to poison you months ago. She smiled at his startled laugh. Look what it got me. A husband with questionable morals and a tendency toward violence. A partner. She tightened her arms around his neck. An empire. A second chance. Everything I thought I'd lost forever. You never lost it. His voice was serious despite the moment. It was always yours. Your talent, your strength, your dreams. Marcus could steal your restaurant, but he could never steal who you are. That was always untouchable. Later, after the last guest had departed and the staff had cleaned up and gone home, Theo and Tessa stood in the kitchen where it had all begun, where she'd first added poison to his wine, where she'd taken the first step toward reclaiming her life. No regrets? He asked, leaning against the counter, watching her with that intense focus she'd grown to crave. Only one. She moved into his arms, feeling his warmth surround her. I regret that I didn't trust myself sooner, that I let Marcus make me small for so long. You're not small now. His hands traced down her spine. You're magnificent. You're building an empire, Tessa. By this time next year, Castellano Sullivan Hospitality will have 5 restaurants across 3 cities. In 5 years, we'll rival any hospitality group in the country. Ah, that's your plan? 5 restaurants in 5 years? That's our plan, he corrected. Your vision, your talent, your standards. I just provide the capital and the business infrastructure. This is your empire, Mrs. Castellano. I'm just lucky enough to be part of it. Mrs. Castellano. The name still felt strange on her tongue, but she was learning to love it. Learning to love the way it connected her to this man who'd fought for her, protected her, helped her rebuild everything she'd lost. I'm pregnant. The words slipped out before she could second-guess them. She'd been saving the news for the perfect moment, and somehow standing in her kitchen with her husband on their wedding night felt exactly right. Theo froze, his hand stilling on her back. What? Found out yesterday. I was going to tell you tonight, but then the wedding was so crazy and I didn't want to overshadow. He kissed her, cutting off her nervous rambling with a kiss so tender and filled with joy that she felt tears prick her eyes. When he finally pulled back, his hands were shaking as they moved to rest on her still flat stomach. A baby. His voice was reverent, awed. We're having a baby. Babies, actually. She bit her lip. The doctor said twins. It runs in my family. My grandmother was a twin. Twins? He laughed, the sound pure and unguarded. Of course we are. Nothing about us is simple, so why would starting a family be any different? He paused, his expression shifting to something more serious. Are you happy? I know this is fast, and I'm delighted. She pulled him flush against her, his forehead resting against hers. Terrified but delighted. You're going to be a father. We're going to be parents, together. Together, he echoed, the word that had become their promise, their foundation, their future. They made love again, slower this time, gentle and reverent, as if acknowledging the new lives growing inside her. And afterward, lying in the apartment above Liaison Rouge, Tessa thought about everything that had led to this moment. A year ago, she'd been broken, hiding in event planning, letting Marcus's theft define her life. 6 months ago, she'd been poisoning her future husband on orders from a crime lord, terrified for her sister's life. 3 months ago, she'd been rebuilding her restaurant from ruins, unsure if she had the strength to face the public again. Now she was married to a man who'd moved heaven and earth to protect her. She was pregnant with twins. She owned her restaurant free and clear. She was building an empire that would eclipse everything Marcus had stolen. And most importantly, she'd reclaimed herself. Her talent, her confidence, her joy in cooking. Theo, she whispered into the darkness. He was drowsy, satisfied, his hand resting protectively over her stomach. Thank you for orchestrating my hiring at the hotel, for watching me for 6 months, for investigating Marcus and Vincent, for faking your death and saving Lily. She turned to face him. I know I should probably be creeped out by the stalking aspect, but honestly, thank you for caring enough to look. I'd do it again. His eyes opened, serious despite his exhaustion. I'd do all of it again. Endure any risk, pay any price. Because you're worth it, Tessa. You and Lily and now our children. You're worth everything. We're going to be okay. She said it with certainty, believing it for the first time. All of us. We're going to build something beautiful and lasting. We're going to show Chicago that the Castellano Sullivan family doesn't just survive. We thrive. Yes, we will. He kissed her softly. Now sleep, Mrs. Castellano. Tomorrow we start building our empire. Tonight we just rest and be grateful we survived long enough to get here. She slept deeply for the first time in years. No nightmares about car accidents or stolen restaurants or poisoned wine. Instead, she dreamed about the future. A restaurant empire spanning continents. Children learning to cook in her kitchen. Theo going fully legitimate and becoming the kind of businessman their kids could be proud of. Growing old together without looking back. When she woke, the morning sun streamed through the windows, Chicago's skyline glittering with promise. Theo was already awake, watching her with that intensity that had become so familiar. Good morning, wife. He said it like a prayer, like a promise. Good morning, husband. She smiled, feeling the weight of her wedding ring, the new life growing inside her, the restaurant beneath them that represented everything she'd survived to reclaim. Ready to build an empire? He pulled her close, kissing her thoroughly. Always. And they did. Over the next 5 years, Castellano-Sullivan Hospitality grew into exactly the empire they'd envisioned. 5 restaurants became 10, then 15. Each one bore her signature style. Innovative, authentic, honoring tradition while embracing evolution. Each one told a story of survival and rebirth. And each one was staffed with people who'd been given second chances, who understood that talent and determination could overcome any obstacle. Theo kept his promise. The criminal enterprises were sold or shut down. The Castellano family business transformed into a legitimate powerhouse that dominated Chicago's hospitality industry. It wasn't easy. There were allies who felt betrayed, enemies who tried to exploit the transition, moments when going back to the old ways seemed simpler than forging ahead. But they persevered. Together. Their twins, a boy and a girl they named Robert and Catherine after her parents, grew up in kitchens, learning to crack eggs and roll dough before they could write their names. They knew their father had a complicated past, but they also knew he'd built something good, something lasting, something they could be proud of. Marcus served 12 years before being released on parole, broken and forgotten. His restaurants had all closed within a year of his imprisonment. His name, once synonymous with culinary innovation, became a cautionary tale about theft and hubris. He tried to rebuild, but no one would work with him. No one would invest. The empire he'd stolen crumbled to dust while hers flourished. She never spoke to him again. She didn't need to. Her success was revenge enough. Vincent died in prison 3 years into his life sentence, his empire completely dismantled, his name erased from Chicago's power structure. When Tessa heard the news, she felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not closure, just nothing. He'd become irrelevant to her life. A footnote in a story that had moved far beyond him. And Tessa became exactly who she was meant to be. Not just a chef, but an empire builder. Not just a survivor, but a woman who'd transformed her trauma into triumph, her pain into power, her stolen dreams into a dynasty that would outlast everyone who'd tried to destroy her. Every year on their anniversary, Tessa and Theo returned to Liaison Rouge, now the flagship of their 15 locations, and she cooked him the same meal she'd served at their wedding. 7 courses that told their story, from poison to partnership, from destruction to dynasty. And every year he'd look at her across the table with that same intensity he'd had the night they met, and he'd say, "Thank you for trying to poison me. Look what it got us." And every year she'd laugh and raise her glass and toast to the most unlikely love story Chicago had ever known. A chef and a crime lord who'd built an empire on the foundations of revenge and found love in the ruins of war. They'd survived, they'd thrived, and they'd proven that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so spectacular, so undeniably successful, that everyone who tried to break you can only watch from the sidelines as you soar. That was her recipe for revenge. Take everything they stole, rebuild it better than before, and create an empire they could never touch. And it was delicious. On a crisp autumn evening, 15 years after that fateful night, when she'd poisoned Theo's wine, Tessa stood in the kitchen of Liaison Rouge with her daughter Catherine, teaching her the same techniques her own mother had taught her. Robert was at culinary school in Paris, following in his mother's footsteps with the same fierce determination she recognized from her own youth. "Mom, why do we always serve this menu on your anniversary?" Catherine asked, carefully piping truffle cream onto pastry shells, the same dish Tessa had been making the night everything changed. Tessa smiled, looking through the service window to where Theo sat at their usual table, his hair now touched with silver at the temples, laugh lines deeper around his eyes, but still watching her with that same intensity that had never faded. "Because it reminds us that even the darkest moments can lead to something beautiful," she said. "That poison can become medicine. That endings are just beginnings in disguise." Catherine looked up, her green eyes so like Tessa's own. "That's really philosophical for a Tuesday night. Your father's influence," Tessa laughed. "He's been reading too much poetry again." "I heard that," Theo called from the dining room, and both women laughed. Later, after the dinner service was complete and Catherine had gone home to her own apartment, her own life, Tessa and Theo sat in the quiet restaurant, hands linked across the table. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Giving up the power, the control, the life you had before me?" "Never." His answer was immediate. Absolute. I traded power for purpose, Tessa. I traded control for connection. I traded a life of violence for a life of building. And I got you, our children, an empire we created together. He squeezed her hand. That's not a trade. That's winning the lottery. She smiled, feeling the truth of his words settle into her bones. They'd built something real, something lasting, something that would continue long after they were gone. Their children would inherit not just restaurants and money, but the knowledge that they came from people who'd survived, who'd fought back, who'd refused to let the darkness win. I love you, she said simply. I know. He grinned, that boyish smile that still made her heart skip. You tell me every day with every dish you cook, every empire you build, every time you choose to stay. And I'll keep choosing you. She stood, moving around the table to settle into his lap, his arms coming around her automatically. Every single day for the rest of our lives. Outside, Chicago glittered in the darkness, a city of second chances and new beginnings. Somewhere in that vast urban sprawl, other people were fighting their own battles, surviving their own betrayals, building their own empires from the ashes of their destroyed dreams. And in a small restaurant in the heart of the city, a chef and her husband sat in comfortable silence, surrounded by the evidence of their victory, secure in the knowledge that they'd taken the worst thing that had ever happened to them and turned it into the best thing that could have happened. That was the real recipe for revenge. Not destruction, but creation. Not tearing down, but building up. Not becoming like the people who hurt you, but becoming so much better that their cruelty becomes irrelevant. Tessa had learned that lesson the hard way, in a kitchen that smelled of truffle cream and possibility, on a night when she'd held poison in her hands and chosen trust instead of fear. And she'd never looked back. The empire she'd built with Theo stood as testament to a simple truth, that the best revenge is a life well lived, a dream fulfilled, a love that endures. And as she sat in her husband's arms, in the restaurant that bore her name, in the city that had tried to break her, Tessa Sullivan Castellano knew with absolute certainty that she'd won, not just against Marcus or Vincent or the forces that had conspired against her, but against the fear and doubt and pain that had threatened to define her. She'd won by refusing to stay a victim, by choosing to fight back, by building something so beautiful and successful that no one could ever take it away. That was her legacy. That was her triumph. That was her recipe for revenge, and it tasted like victory.